Welcome to the Uncommon Comedy Podcast. I am your host, Brian Apprille. On this podcast, what we're trying to do is we're going to be discussing stand-up comedy. We're going to be talking about some of the inside stuff of stand-up, the behind-the-scenes stuff. And since this is always a podcast about comedy with heart, we're going to be talking a little bit about charity. I'm really excited for my guest today. He is a producer, writer, actor, comedian. If you've had television or been to a movie in the last 3 decades, you've seen this man, you know this man. You may have seen him in movies, blockbuster hits like Terminator 2, Pursuit of Happyness, and he's got a new movie called Stacks out. If you've seen him on TV, on NBC's hit show Chuck, he was Big Mike. Very, very funny comedian and actor. Please welcome the very funny, the one, the only Mark Christopher Lawrence. Mark Christopher Lawrence, sir, how are you today?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you holding up? First things first, how are you holding up with the old quarantine?
Every day I'm waking up with something else hurting for no good reason.
That's just getting old.
I think it's probably part of me trying to sleep like a cat.
Absolutely. 23 hours a day. Yep. Very nice. Yeah, exactly. So I first met you, I met you a couple of times before we performed together. I remember the first show that we were on together. Was at a place called Twigs, which is I was headlining that night. And what's cool about Twigs is they have headliners scattered throughout the lineup. It's not like a normal 3-person show where it's, opener, feature, headliner. And I had met you a couple times, very nice guy. We talked, and then I saw you go on stage, and you went on like 2 before me. And that night I was like, okay, I'm going to work some new stuff and try to do that. And you went up and absolutely murdered. And I was like, I'm going to go bring my A game because I saw that it was one of the fun. It was all set. It was all ready. And you were up there killing it. And I was like, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get my game face on.
The night that there was these students in the audience, a guy with 2 girls. And I was kind of talking to them a little bit. And some funny stuff came out. And Tony was taping, but it didn't make the tape for some reason.
Oh, that's always the worst.
Bummed.
That's always the worst. Do you find it, for me, it's always something funny about taping a set. I should just tape every set because whenever I don't tape, it's a great set. And I'm like, oh, I wish I'd taped that. But then when I do film, I'm always thinking about, make sure you don't screw this up or mess that up.
Yeah.
And it's always.
Yeah. Every time I plan to tape, it's never good.
Yeah. It's always interesting. So let's talk a little bit about you. Give us a little bit of your background. How did you get started in comedy? What was your inspiration for starting stand-up?
Well, I had a English teacher that got me involved in speech and debate and acting, and she connected me with a mentor, Perry Brents, to work with me on a speech that I ended up winning the state championship with, and made it to the national championships, and it was one of the 2 people left from California in finals of the nationals. I didn't win, but the mentor that she connected me with was at USC at the time, and he produced a show called Evening of Soul. And he asked me if I'd want to do some comedy on Evening of Soul because he thought I was funny. And so me and my friend Lennon went to the Comedy Store one night, and I got up and did 3 minutes and was funny, and I didn't really have an act. I just got up there and talked about my day. And so then Perry sort of helped me structure, as Lennon and I figured out how to do comedy together as a team. But then I did a couple of shows of Evening of Soul and was funny, and that's how it started. That was the beginning. I was in the 11th grade.
Wow, 11th grade. So you've been doing comedy how long professionally, would you say, give or take?
Well, I think I first got paid in 88.
Okay, so been a while.
Yeah.
You got a few shows under that belt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, where did you start out? So you were LA. You basically started out in LA. Okay. And so what was that scene kind of like back then? Because I started out on the East Coast. So
it's a lot different than now. Now, I feel like a lot of the younger comics are a little cutthroat with each other. They get in their little cliques and that kind of thing. And when I was starting out in comedy, comics just wanted the show to be funny, and they wanted you to do well. And So all these older comics would help you with your stuff. You know, it's like I ended up opening for a lot of people over the years, and every one of them helped me get better.
So, how do you? Why do you think that's kind of been lost as far as that? Because it's a very cutthroat, it's a very personal experience. Why do you? I don't know. Why do you feel that that's kind of been gone away?
It's parenting. It's
Absolutely.
too much of this.
Yep. Yeah, it's always
and people's skills aren't good.
It's always been very interesting to see like the cutthroat side of comedy. People think it's just everyone's supportive, and it's not like that. I mean, it's nice when you get around a group of people, but there's a lot of lonely nights and a lot of ego and a lot of jealousy and a lot of all that sort of stuff that people don't quite realize.
Oh yeah.
So let me ask you this: what was some of the best advice that someone gave you about comedy?
Robin Harris, who was just an amazing comedian, headliner. But at the Black Comedy Act Theater in LA, he would host the show. And the show sold out every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. And he was the reason it sold out. People came to see him. They could care less that anybody else was on the show. They came to see him because he was so funny. And he had me open for him a few times because I was pretty clean. And he had me open for him like in a park on a Saturday at like 2:00. And he said to me, he says, "Mark, write clean." He says, "Always write clean." He says, "You can work anywhere." That was the best advice anybody ever gave me.
Yeah.
And then Bill Cosby told me to slow down.
So what was that like working with Bill Cosby? I mean, obviously we know now of Bill Cosby,
I worked with Bill in a movie, and I was in my trailer watching my 7-minute tape, and Bill and Sidney Poitier walked by. Sidney Poitier was directing the movie. They walked by the trailer and saw that I was watching it, and Bill stepped back and stepped up onto the steps and said, "Hey, how long is it?" I said, 7 minutes. He says, "Rewind it." So I rewound the tape. He watched my whole 7 minutes, and he says, "It sounds like you're afraid of the silence." He says, "You keep stepping on laughs." He says, "You just bring in the material." He says, "You did like 20 minutes of material in 7 minutes." He says, "Look, if they're not talking, they're listening. Don't be afraid of the silence." He says, "Don't move, don't talk. After that joke has landed, wait for the laugh to subside and then go." And it changed the way I perform.
Yeah, it's that's such great advice. If there's any comedians out there that are watching, it's don't be afraid of the silence. You don't want to step
they're not
up.
chattering.
Right. You just want them to, you want them to listen and appreciate it. And what I think what people don't realize, what some comics don't realize, is you're training them by stepping on the laughs to not laugh.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to miss what's coming next. So they go, "Oh, I gotta shut up so I can hear the next part," as opposed to letting them enjoy it, and that will just make your set even better.
Well, that's like in films when you're editing. It's like there's this really funny moment, and then you have to try to find something that's not so funny after, because people are going to be laughing. They're going to miss that next little piece.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, you have to think ahead. That's pretty. I don't know too much about filmmaking, but yeah, that makes total sense. Now you talked about clean. So you've had the choice to not necessarily work clean throughout this whole time. What kept you working clean, and what are the different because everyone has a definition of clean. What is your definition of clean comedy?
My definition of clean comedy is, will I be embarrassed if my mother heard it? Will it embarrass her? So if I'm going clean, and I think of, say, church clean, no body parts, no bad language, no innuendo.
Yeah, it's funny because clean has often a negative connotation. When someone says, "Oh, they're a clean comic," they think it's not funny. And
it took me 2 years to get into the Reno Tahoe Comedy Club, after a friend of mine went there and saw the comics that he had on and said, "Hey, you should bring Mark Christopher Lawrence up here." And he goes, "Well, is he funny?" And he goes, "Yeah." So he calls me up while he's at the club, and I said to him, he said, "What's your act like?" I said, "Well, I work clean." He goes, "Clean? Are you funny?"
Yeah, and people don't realize that they're amazing. Like Jerry Seinfeld is clean,
Yeah.
Jim Gaffigan is clean. Brian Regan is clean, and no one sits there and goes, "They're not. They're amazing. They're amazing
Ben
comics."
was clean,
Yeah, there's so many people. I always just found that interesting. I mean, there's a lot of clean comics that are I don't necessarily call them comics because they're not funny.
Red Fox was clean in the early years. If you listen to some of his early stuff, it wasn't until he got onto Laugh Records that he started going blue.
Yeah, it's similar to George Carlin. Carlin was very corporate and clean and all of that in the beginning as well, and then he kind of switched over. One of the things I love about your act is you incorporate act outs really well, and I don't know if that's just because of the acting background or whatever, where some comics will just stand pretty still, just deliver the setup punchline, and for those who maybe aren't too familiar, because this is for both comics and non-comics, what is an act out, and why do you like using them? What is it about that enhances your act?
It's funny. It wasn't until recently, like over the past maybe 5 years or so, that I actually heard the phrase act outs. For me, it was just, as I'm doing my act, it just felt natural that if a character is talking, let the character talk. If a character is doing something, then do it. It's more show me than tell me.
So adding an element of physicality in, and it allows basically the audience you're bringing them into that world, and they can see, like you said, that character interacting, and you see them live and in person. It just adds another dimension to it. Plus, you can extend laughs so much more with a good, act out at just some physicality or facial expression, or there's so many subtleties in comedy that people don't necessarily get into.
There's what's his name, Chris. I can't remember his last name right now, but he does this thing that I kind of picked up. He'll be in the middle of his act, and then he'll start talking softly, and you noticeably see people lean in. And I watched him a whole weekend. I was up in Reno, and I watched him, and he would do it in different points of his act, and it felt like he was doing it when he felt like the energy wasn't what he wanted it to be, and then he'd get him to lean in, and then he'd turn it on again, and it was like I was like, "Oh, that's brilliant."
That's really...
So I find myself, borrowing that.
Yeah, just creating that little bit of tension, just lowering the voice and get like you said, get people leaned in, build that tension up, and then pop them. That's great. That's really interesting. I haven't seen anyone do that too much on a consistent basis like that, but that's really cool.
Yeah, well, like my act is stories. I'm telling stories, and the way I put it together, it's like it kind of goes up and down, ultimately leading to a hard out. And I think sometimes I bring it down on purpose to give the audience a break.
Right.
I mean, most comics, you got to be pat, 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 give me a joke, a punchline, and a laugh every 18, 19 seconds. And I don't feel like that. I feel like I'll just tell the story, and at the end, will you remember some of the stuff that I said? Yeah. And at the end of the show, when people are coming up wanting to shake my hand because I talk about shaking hands, or they coming up saying that they had to go let out a little pee because I talk about letting out a little pee, then I've done my job.
Right. Well, and that's a big contrast, especially the length of time. So if you're doing just like a shorter set, like a 5-7 minute set somewhere and a showcase, then you want to just go up and hit them hard. But then if you're doing an hour, then you got to give them that chance to breathe and catch their breath. And but that's a lot of...
You don't want to kill nobody, which I have.
So you killed somebody from comedy.
Killed the dude.
How did that happen?
So I'm doing a show in La Jolla, and there were 4 other comics on the show from San Diego, and so I was so glad other comics were there to see it. And about 13 minutes into my 45-minute set, the host comes up and says, "Hey, Mark, I'm sorry." He takes the mic. He says, "Is there a doctor in the house?" And turns out there's 4 doctors in the house. One of them head ER doc in San Diego. They go to work on this guy. This guy apparently was laughing so hard that he keeled over and died. The lady sitting next to him, she and I became friends afterwards. You know, she was like, "Wow, he was laughing so hard," and then he just slumped over. And
Wow.
you know, I killed the dude. You know, don't make me use these jokes.
That's right.
You know, with this pandemic going on, I might go into a bank. Knock knock.
So that's a pretty interesting show. What this is one of everyone comics' favorite discussion because we all had them. What is the worst show that you've ever had?
Oh, corporate gig about 3 years ago, which should have been a great gig. It was great money. It was in Palm Springs at the Merv Griffin estate. And before I went, something said to me, ask them about lighting. So the guy that booked me, I called him up. I said, "Hey, can you find out what the lighting situation is?" Because it looked like, you know, from the conversation and the email was that there was going to be a show like in the backyard of this estate. And so I said, "Oh yeah, there's going to be lighting. There's a DJ. He's going to handle the sound, blah, 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 blah." I get there, I go through the house, out through the sliding glass door, and they have sort of an L-shaped table set up. There's a buffet behind one side of the L, and then the lady says to me, "Well, maybe you could do your act right here, and everybody could just sit here at the table." And so I look up, and the only lights there, and it's starting to get dark, are these string hanging light bulbs, and I was like, that's not going to work. I said, nobody's going to be able to see my face. I said, I kind of depend on that. And she goes, "Well, how much light do you need?" She goes, "Well, let me talk to the DJ. Talk to the DJ. He's like, "Well, I got some lights we can set on the floor and just shine up at you." I said, so then they set me up near the DJ. "Okay, you'll just do it over here. This area is lit well." And it was great lighting over there. I said, "Yeah, okay, this will work." And the DJ was going to introduce me, and he plays a song or two, and a little while later, I just hear, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a comic." And so they didn't invite anybody over to see the show. So there's 6 or 8 people that had staggered over and sat down on the ground. And I'm doing the show, and literally kids are running through between me and the people that are sitting. And about 15 minutes in, the music starts playing again. And I look over, and he was like, and that was it. I didn't have to do it any more time. So the lady who booked me, her boyfriend was there, and he was a new comic. And he said that he told her, no, this is terrible for comedy. He said, "This guy's a pro. Look how he's just plowing through no matter what's going on. You got to let him stop." And that was, I drove home feeling terrible, even though I had the money.
Right. That's one of those shows where you just go, I got the check.
Yeah. You know, I used to open for Jack Marion, who used to open for Lenny Bruce. And Jack would tell me, we'd get to a gig, and he'd look around, he'd go, "Just do enough time to get the money."
Well, it's hard. It's hard to remain professional during that, you know, something like that. It's so hard. You just have to sit there. For me, like when it's really bad like that, I just have to go on like autopilot almost and just go.
That's exactly what happened. You know, because I get distracted with like kids running through. It distracts me, so it messes up your timing and all that. And it was really terrible. It was a terrible experience. The worst show ever.
Wow. Somebody asked me recently about mine, and it actually happened to be a show that you know about. And I said it was so bad that it doesn't even register as a bad show. It was, I think you know what I'm talking about, the airport.
Oh yeah,
so the airport, and it was just there was I think 4 other comics, and it was in the food court, and it was near the international terminal. So a lot of people didn't speak English. People just getting their food in and out, and it was the only laughter that anyone was getting was from the comics howling hysterically because of this train wreck.
So terrible.
There's nothing funnier.
I'm going to do it again.
I would too. I think that's a great place to, because people go, why would you subject yourself to that? Well, it's a different set of tools. You're going to have a limited crowd, certain amount of attention span. You can work on crowd work. You can
and I think it works better with short pop bits.
Yep.
You know, like me, I can't get up there and tell stories.
Right. And callbacks will certainly be lost on people if you have something that's later on. And
exactly.
It's just that was a fun.
It was painful.
It was very painful, but it was more painful before you got on stage because you just it's like getting a whooping, you know. It's like as our friend Mateen says, it's like watching your brother get beat by your dad, knowing that your whooping's next. So,
I wish there was somebody getting a whooping before me. You know, usually I was the one getting the whooping.
That's right.
Yeah, my mom was like, she wasn't tired at all.
Yeah. So regarding comedy, is there like a bit that no matter how hard you tried, you just couldn't get it to work? Or is there something in your act that took a long time, just a lot of massaging that just didn't work and you kept at it and kept at it?
Well, I have a bit that's hit or miss. And it's and the funny thing is it's funny. It's a funny bit. But I think, I mostly do it at churches, and I think people don't know how to take it, because I mean, the bit is this: it's like, women are complicated, and you've been complicated a long time. Here's how I know: the Bible says on the 6th day, Adam, God put Adam in a deep coma-like sleep, pulled a rib from his side, and he formed woman. God then blew the breath of life into woman, and saw that woman was good. Then God needed a break. In fact, he stopped creating after that. So that bit sometimes there's a little bit more to it, but sometimes it gets a huge laugh, and sometimes people tighten up. Right. And I haven't figured out why.
It's almost like they think you're I don't know. I think they're afraid of that you're going to go somewhere against God or something like that. I think that's probably just that fear and that tension or whatever.
I don't know. I don't know what it is, or against women or something. But
that's it's so interesting how just little variations of words and phrases can affect comedy. Now, you also do a lot of acting, as we discussed. What are some of the differences between performing stand-up, doing comedy for stand-up versus like comedic acting?
Well, it's hugely different. Comedy for stand-up, I mean, it's your voice. You've written it. You have complete control over how you say what you say when you say. Whereas with acting, it's like somebody else wrote it. So you're trying to get into the rhythm of that character. Mm. And sometimes the character is so far from myself that it doesn't work in my rhythm. So I have to do the rhythm of the character to make the joke work. It's just a different way to work. Completely different.
Did it mess with you a little bit to not have any laughter coming back because you're used to that from stand-up? So when you deliver a joke in a TV show or whatever, or a movie?
No, because when I started doing TV comedy, it was in the 80s when it was all sitcom. There were no like dramedies like on Chuck. Mm-hmm. Chuck was a quote unquote kind of dramedy, and there's no live audience, but with the sitcoms there's live audience, so there's on shoot days there's always laughter.
Okay. Do you have any fun like stories like what was from being on set with a movie or TV show that really sticks out in your mind?
I don't know. I mean, there's so many stories. That's kind of a thing where it's like I wish I'd have looked at your email sooner.
How is it? How is it like working with Will Smith?
Will was great. It's like I was supposed to work with him on Fresh Prince, and I get there and the character had been written out, and nobody called me. And so he goes, "Nobody called him." It's funny because my car had broken down. It's like early in my career, so I took the bus to get there. So they got a car service to take me back home, and I still get residuals from it, even though I didn't do the show because it was a guest star.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah, and so then the next time I saw Will was on Pursuit of Happyness, and I walk into the trailer for hair and makeup, and he was just down to earth. He gets up like a lot of stars get their makeup done in their own trailer, and he just gets up and comes over, gives me a hug, and welcomes me to set, and it was just really, really above and beyond. Just really a great guy to work with.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he seems like a good dude. And speaking of that, that whole doing good and then being good people, you have kind of aligned yourself with a foundation, Human Growth Foundation. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that, what it is, and how did you kind of get involved in that?
The Human Growth Foundation, it's a foundation about that works with kids with growth disorders. And there's a lot of endocrinologists and big pharmaceutical companies that are behind it, about trying to find a way to help these kids. And I used to do a lot of stuff for autism care and treatment. And the lady who would hire me to do that stuff called me up one day and asked me if I'd host this gala for Human Growth Foundation. So she hired me to do that, and then I ended up doing, I guess this year's gala would have been my 7th year in a row, doing their gala. And I do four shows or 4 events a year for them. A Walk for Kids Growth in New York, a Walk for Kids Growth in LA, the gala, and also a Say No Bullying festival in LA.
That's cool. So what is it about charity that you think why is it important to find one and get aligned and give back to people?
Well, I mean, for me, it's I get to play for a living,
Right.
And to be totally blessed in this way, it's an awesome thing, and it just makes sense to give back. It just makes sense to not be selfish.
Yeah. And so if people want to look into the Human Growth Foundation, they can check out www.hgfound.org. If they go on Facebook, it's at Human Growth Foundation, and their Instagram is at human_growth_foundation, and their Twitter is at human_growth_FDN. And Mark, where can people find you? I'm going to put up your
all my social media can be found at the bottom of my website. Just go to my website, and you can get all my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook from the website, markchristopherlawrence.com. Or you can just Google me, Mark Christopher Lawrence. Google me, and everything pops up.
markchristopherlawrence.com, Facebook at MCL Actor Comedian, on Instagram at Mark Christopher Lawrence. Your Twitter is at Mark CHR Lawrence, and your YouTube user Mark C Lawrence. Now you've also recently started doing a Cameo thing. You're on Cameo, which is a cool thing. So if people, if you have people out there who love Chuck or Pursuit of Happyness
or anything, or Fear of a Black Hat, I've been getting a lot of requests from Fear of a Black Hat and Pursuit of Happyness and Terminator. And
so tell us a little bit about Cameo. What is
Cameo? Basically, you go to Cameo, you find a celebrity or a comedian or somebody that you like, and see if they're on there. And if they're on there, you can pay a fee, and they do a shout out for you. And so I've been like singing birthdays and all kinds of stuff. I had one the other day where the parents had me do a birthday call for their daughter, and then they sent me a link back to it after they showed it to her on their TV, and she was crying. It was so beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. That's such a cool thing. So people can check you out on Cameo, get a shout out, or they can check you out on social media. And then I guess last thing, what advice do you have for comics, or for starting out, or just in general? What sort of advice can you give to somebody?
Write every day. Just find your voice. Get on stage as much as possible. The more you get on stage, the better you get.
That's pretty much the truth right there. So again, you can check out Mark at markchristopherlawrence.com. All social media is there. And again, you want to check out the Human Growth Foundation. That is hgfound.org. And Mark, thank you so much for taking some time today, and continued success. And we'll hopefully be done with this soon, and we can all get back to getting out and making people laugh in person.
Thank you, B. I may be giving you a call to do a similar thing for my Tuesday Night Comics thing.
Absolutely, would love to. You know that. You can always count on me.
All right, brother.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate you. All right.
Take care.